Uncle's shocking cabin rules. What I found in the Rockies will haunt me forever. It was a place steeped in whispers and unsettling legends. A shadowy nook of the Rockies where few dared to tread. The cabin loomed like a dark sentinel at the edge of the mountain, shrouded by a dense fog that clung to the ground like a guilty secret. The air felt heavy, charged with an electric anticipation, as if this very spot was holding its breath. Nobody could explain why Uncle Jack had chosen this forsaken domain for our family retreat. It was rumored he had stumbled upon something here, something so fierce and unfathomable that it changed the very fabric of his being. The first eerie sign arrived that night. The howling wind wasn't regular. It carried a strange, modulated wail echoing through the trees. I could have sworn I heard voices, whispers tangled with a desperate sort of laughter. Every passing minute felt like a countdown, the kind that leaves you with a tight chest and a lump in your throat. We huddled around the fireplace, feigning warmth, but the chill wrapped itself around us like a coil, squeezing tighter with each chill laugh that echoed outside. My little brother even asked if the coyotes were singing us a lullaby, and I could see the wild fear blooming in his wide eyes. As the clock ticked closer to midnight, the tension escalated. Uncle Jack's old wooden chest caught my eye, standing tall in the corner of the room, its iron locks rusted from years of neglect. What secrets did it hold? I could almost hear it calling, begging to be opened. But Uncle's rules were strict. Never go near the chest unless you wanted to see what the darkness had penned inside. The shadows around us seemed to beckon, and I felt an eerie pull, a dark invitation. Tension curled in the pit of my stomach as Uncle Jack told hushed stories of the cursed woods surrounding us, tales that echoed with a rattle of disbelief. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon, and while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. When light finally faded into deep darkness, we all strained to catch a glimpse of something, anything, outside the small windows to find a sense of normalcy in the petrifying night. A sudden crash roared in the distance, slicing through the heavy silence like a knife, freezing us in place. What had caused that noise? Was it a fallen branch or something more sinister? The whole cabin seemed to vibrate with a collective gasp. I felt every nerve in my body sparked alive, urging me to flee or fight whatever shadow lurked beyond our walls. And then, without warning, the door shuddered and rattled, as if something intangible was clawing to get in. Terror flooded my senses. Was it just the wind? Or was there really something out there? My heart raced, pounding like a war drum. Uncle Jack's eyes darkened, locked on the door, fear etched in the lines of his face. He knew something, or maybe he was part of this terrible mystery. I couldn't help but wonder, what rule was he guarding us from? What would happen if we finally decided to break it? As the trembling wood began to crack, I took a step back. The questions swirled in my mind, and I felt a deep sense of foreboding settle over me like a wet blanket. What had we awakened in the Rockies, and would we ever really be safe again? The door rattled again, louder this time, and I could feel the panic rise up my throat like bile. Uncle Jack stood, rigid as stone, as the creaking wood gave way to a bone-chilling silence. I blinked rapidly, trying to clear my mind, but the air thickened with each breath I took. My brother crouched low, hiding behind the couch, his little fingers pressed against his ears, as if blocking out the terror that enveloped us. "What's out there?" my cousin whispered, voice trembling like a fragile leaf in the wind. Uncle Jack's gaze flickered between us and the door, shadows playing tricks on our eyes as he seemed to weigh options, choices that could lead to salvation or doom. "Stay quiet," he hissed, his voice a blend of urgency and fear. "Whatever it is, let it pass." Those words hung in the air, heavy. It felt wrong. How could we just sit and wait? I turned toward the window, hoping to catch a glimpse of whatever was lurking outside. Shimmering through the fog, A figure moved, not quite human, twisting and contorting into grotesque shapes. I squinted, my breath hitching in my throat. "Did you see that?" I gasped. "Just shadows," Uncle Jack barked, but the quiver in his authority said differently. The noise picked up again: scratches, a rustle, and then a soft thud, like something heavy had fallen against the door. Suddenly, the air split with a blood-curdling scream. Not a human scream. It was the cry of something lost, filled with pain and a deep, primal hunger. I recoiled, the sound seeping into my bones, freezing the blood in my veins. My heart raced as Uncle Jack dashed toward the chest, moving with an urgency that sent chills crawling down my spine. "What are you doing? Trust me. We need to be ready," he shouted back, fumbling with the ancient lock. "What's in there?" I felt a swell of anger rise, smashing against the walls of my fear. "You can't just keep pushing these rules. We have to know." "Not knowing is safer," he grunted, teeth clenched, the bones of his hands white against the dark wood. Before I could respond, I heard another crash and the door bucked under the weight of whatever was outside. A horrible scratching followed, nails dragging across the wood with a sound that made the hairs on my arms stand tall. "Everyone, get back," Uncle Jack ordered sharply, and the commanding authority in his voice felt like a lifeline. But as we huddled together, breathless, I saw it again: shadows darting just beyond our sight, flickering like phantoms in the fog. Fear coiled like a living thing inside me, wrapping tighter and tighter. "Do you feel that?" my little brother whispered, shaking uncontrollably. "What? Like it wants to come in." I didn't know how he could sense it, but I felt it too: the raw hunger of something dark and twisted. As Uncle Jack finally pried the chest open, an unbearable wind burst through the cabin, extinguishing the flickering fire and slamming the curtains against the windows. The chest opened to a darkness so deep it felt alive, writhing and whispering secrets that pricked at my mind. Somehow, I knew whatever lay within would change everything. "Are you ready for this?" Uncle Jack asked, throwing me a glance filled with equal parts dread and resolution. I wanted to scream that we had to run, to escape this nightmare before it swallowed us whole. But I could only nod, barely, caught between terror and the need to know. As the wind howled, tearing through the cabin like the breath of a beast, Uncle Jack plunged his hand into the shadowy abyss of the chest, drawing out something that glimmered with a sinister allure. "Hold on." Just then, the cabin shook, and the door burst open with a primal force, a gust of darkness flooding through. What had we woken? What awaited us in the chilling grip of the night? The darkness swirled into the cabin like a living entity, eclipsing everything in its path. It suffocated the light, twisting and clawing at the corners of our refuge. Uncle Jack's grip tightened around the glimmering object in his hand, and a low growl vibrated through the cabin's walls, a sound so primal it felt like it came from the earth itself. "Get back," Uncle Jack yelled, his voice a command edged with desperation. He raised the object high, a small, polished stone that pulsed with an eerie luminescence. Its glow pushed back the encroaching darkness ever so slightly, but just as quickly as it illuminated, it cast long, jagged shadows that danced and contorted on the walls like tormentors. "Is that a crystal?" I whispered, instinctively moving closer, drawn to its radiance amidst the chaos. Uncle Jack's eyes burned with an intensity one had never witnessed. He seemed both terrified and entranced. "It's not just a crystal. It's a key," he replied, his voice strained. "A key to something buried deep within this place. And that something is trying to break through." "What do you mean?" My heart raced, each thud echoing the cold fear flooding my veins. Before Uncle Jack could answer, the howling wind shifted into a cacophony of voices, whispers and cries, hissing like serpents in the night. I pressed my hands to my ears, trying to block out the chilling cacophony, but it seeped into my mind, shaping horrid images, each more grotesque than the last. "Make it stop," my little brother cried, his voice cracking. He darted forward, eyes wide as he stared at the door now gaping like a mouth ready to swallow us whole. "Stay back," Uncle Jack shouted, but it was too late. The darkness poured in. At the threshold, shadows morphed into figures, grotesque silhouettes with long, talon-like fingers and hollowed eyes that glowed with an unnatural light. They were faceless, yet their very presence screamed out desperation, hunger, rage, and something deeper, something ancient. "Don't look at them," Uncle Jack barked, scrambling backward. "Focus on the crystal." Panic twisted my gut, but the crystal called to me, a beacon in a storm. Uncle Jack's grip tightened as he moved forward, still fighting the dreadful power of the void that encroached upon us. I felt a strange pull toward the shimmering stone, as if it held a secret that could change everything. The floor groaned beneath our feet, as if the cabin itself were alive and terrified. "We need to close it," I realized, confidence surging despite the terror constricting my throat. "We have to seal whatever is out there." "Do you really think that is possible?" Uncle Jack's skepticism cut through the panic. But then one glance at the advancing darkness convinced him that we were out of options. With his heart pounding, Uncle Jack shouted over the wailing winds, "We need to say the words." "What words?" I yelled, but another figure surged through the doorway, clawed fingers reaching toward us like serpents. "The words of the old folk, the protection chant." His voice broke with urgency as the shadows threatened to engulf us. A memory flickered through my mind, a forgotten lesson from childhood spoken in hushed tones by our grandmother about warding off darkness using the words passed through generations. "Help me! Don't let it take me!" my brother screamed, gripping my leg, his eyes wide with terror. "Together," I shouted, remembering the melody to the missing incantation. "We say it together." I looked at Uncle Jack, wondering if he had faith in this old tale. He nodded, and we joined hands with my brother, the trembling warmth of our palms a small comfort against the encroaching doomed in harmony. We began to chant, voices intertwining amid the howling chaos, sweat beading on our foreheads. The shadows recoiled, and for a moment, the darkness hesitated. "Keep going," Uncle Jack urged, eyes fierce. But just when it felt like we were breaking through, the shadows surged, a tide of anger and despair, overwhelming our voices. The ground trembled, and I could feel the vibrations of something heavy and ancient stirring, awakening beneath our feet. "Just a little longer," I cried out, panic flooding my senses. In an unexpected surge, the shadows pushed violently, smashing against our circle. And then a deafening silence fell. We held our breath, staring wide-eyed at the stillness before us, praying it wasn't just the calm before the storm. But lurking within that silence was a whisper, cold and mocking, sending chills racing down my spine. "Do you really think you can hold back the night?" What had we awakened? What awaited us in this stifling quiet? A pause before destruction. A pulse seemed to resonate from the crystal, thrumming in rhythm with my racing heart. The silence stretched, pinching the air tight enough to feel like a noose around my neck. I exchanged frantic glances with Uncle Jack. His eyes, wide and wild, searched for an answer that was slipping through our fingers like sand in an hourglass. Then it happened. A rift opened amidst the darkness, a faint glimmer betraying the oncoming tide. Something stirred, something ancient, powerful, and undeniably hungry. The whisper, now more than a mere echo, filled the cabin like smoke, thick and suffocating. "Let us in," I stumbled back, nearly colliding with my brother, who was trembling not just with fear but with an energy that felt alien. The cabin walls trembled, as though the very structure was arguing against its existence, pushing against an unseen, malevolent force. Uncle Jack tightened his grip on the crystal, its glow flickering like a dying star. "Focus," he shouted, desperation creeping into his voice. "Keep chanting the words." But for every syllable we uttered, the shadows grew bolder, warping into forms that leered at us from the edges of the darkness. They whispered promises, promises of power, of freedom, of everything we had ever desired. I felt my resolve waver as their cool voices curled into my mind, trying to unravel me from the inside. "You can't fight us, fight it," Uncle Jack shouted, his face contorted, sweat slicking his brow as his strength seemed to falter. "We are stronger together." My heart thudded painfully in my chest, the chant slipping from my lips as I battled with the images flooding into my mind. Visions clawed at me of lost opportunities, of desires turned into obsessions. My brother clutched my hand tighter, grounding me amid the chaos. I focused on him, on the innocence captured in his terrified eyes. Together, I echoed back to Uncle Jack, gripping my brother's hand even harder. We locked eyes, and something ignited within me, a fierce will to fight against the impending doom. Forward, I screamed, taking a step toward the shadows, pushing through the trembling air thicker than molasses. The light from the crystal flared, igniting scars of warmth against the oppressive cold of despair that clawed around us. Their faces creased into snarl-like grins, a grotesque tableau framed by the darkness. "You'll never win," they hissed, voices melding into a single, chilling sound. "The night is eternal," I swallowed hard, my throat tight as sweat began to bead at my temples. "We won, be your vessels," I shouted, every ounce of passion burning in my chest as we chanted together. The power within the crystal surged, and the figures inched back, retreating just slightly. It was a small victory, yet the shadows roared, twisting violently in response, a storm raging against a fragile flame. I was painfully aware that with every victory came the looming threat of their resurgence. Is this enough? I thought, panic threading through my thoughts. Can we really stop this? When I saw it, a dark figure emerging from the swirling shadows, more substantial and terrifying than the others. It was a spectacle of twisting limbs and hollowness, and with every pulse of the crystal, it grew closer, pulling itself from the void. I could hardly breathe, dread settling in my stomach like lead. "Do not fear," it slithered, its voice bone-chilling yet oddly seductive. "What I offer you is but a taste of the power that lies within. Join us, embrace the night." "No," I yelled, choking on the words. "We're stronger than this." The ground trembled beneath me, the boundaries of our small refuge threatening to unravel as the shadows seemed to thicken around the figure. I could feel Uncle Jack's fear losing its grip on rationality. He stepped forward as if caught in a trance. "Don't," I cried, but he was already entranced, the light from the crystal dimming, flickering nervously against the growing fear. In that instant, something deep inside me shifted. I was not just fighting back against the darkness. I was fighting for those I loved. And so, with our hands pulsating around the crystal, I screamed one final incantation, a surge of light erupting violently as if to cast away every fragment of fear. But then, as the shadows receded, that vile laugh echoed once more, a chilling reminder that we may have awakened something even greater than ourselves. "Don't think it's over, little ones," it whispered ominously. "You've merely opened the door. What had we really unleashed upon ourselves? And could we stand against the darkness should it return?" The air crackled with anticipation, that thick, suffocating silence wrapping around us again. The shadows scraped against the walls like fingernails on a chalkboard, each sound canceling out my heartbeat, each breath drowning in unease. I glanced at Uncle Jack, determination and fear etched across his features. Just moments ago, he had seemed so resolute, but now doubt danced in his eyes like a flickering flame on the edge of extinction. "Stay close," Uncle Jack commanded, his voice fierce as he took a step back from the rift. The crystal pulsed wildly in response, illuminating his face and revealing lines of panic that creased his brow. My brother, still shaking, shifted beside me, his breath hitching. "What do we do now?" he whispered, eyes darting around as if the shadows could suddenly take form and snatch us away. "Now we fight," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I lifted the crystal, its glow warm in my palm, and I stepped forward, determined to face whatever nightmare was lurking just beyond the breach. With each word of the incantation that escaped my lips, I visualized the triumph of light over darkness, the image of hope against despair. The shadowy tendrils undulated, stretching toward us, desperate to snuff out our defiance. I could feel Uncle Jack rallying beside me, his voice growing stronger with each repetition. "Together. Remember, we're stronger together," I repeated, emboldened by the partnership we formed. The crystal flared brighter, a beacon in the thickening night, and the shadows recoiled. But then, they began to shift again, morphing into grotesque figures more defined than before. My breath hitched in my throat. Their eyes, black voids, locked onto mine, pulling me into an inescapable abyss of despair. I stumbled backward, my resolve faltering. "No, no. Fight it, sis," my brother shouted, his tiny fist clenching with a strength that inspired me. The fevered chant surged between us, binding us, forging a protective barrier against the encroaching dread. We drew power from each other. Ours was an energy that felt unstoppable. I glanced back just in time to see Uncle Jack's expression turn to one of horror. "Look out!" he yelled, eyes wide at in an instant. The largest of the shadows lunged, a flurry of limbs and darkness sweeping toward me. I could see its jagged teeth, glimmering with unnatural hunger. Time slowed, a pit forming in my stomach as if the world had betrayed me. A feeling of truth settled. These things didn't just want in. They wanted to consume us whole. With a surge of adrenaline, I threw the crystal at the malevolent figure. "Get away from us!" I shouted, my voice echoing in the small cabin. The moment the crystal struck the shadow, a brilliant white light exploded outward, momentarily casting away the darkness. But the attack did not deter the creature. It merely howled a deafening noise that penetrated the very marrow of my bones. The walls shuddered in reaction, splintering under the weight of its fury. "Run!" Uncle Jack yelled, his voice slicing through the chaos. We took off towards the back door, desperation fueling our legs. But before we could reach safety, a cold wind surged, pulling us back, its chill seizing my breath as I fought against it. The darkness twisted and coiled, a serpent seeking to ensnare its prey. The air turned electric, vibrating with an otherworldly force as the shadows reformed, blocking our escape. "Let us out," I cried, but my words were drowned out by the cacophony of laughter, low and mocking. "I warned you," the familiar voice permeated the air again, taunting us. "You thought you could resist, but now you have unleashed the true darkness." Time hung suspended around us, and I felt the crystal slip from my fingers, rolling across the floor, its light dimming as if surrendering. "Evelyn!" Uncle Jack screamed. I felt panic swell within me, my heart racing as I fumbled to reach it, knowing it might be our last chance. What was our next move? Would we find the strength to escape, or were we bound to confront the darkness we had unwittingly awakened? Panic coursed through me as I lunged for the crystal, the world narrowing down to that singular, glowing hope. Each second felt heavier, dread pooling in my stomach while shadows writhed hungrily around us. "Evelyn, hurry!" Uncle Jack shouted, his voice laced with urgency. I grasped the crystal, its warmth pulsing in my palm, filling me with a fleeting spark of courage. I glanced up just as the largest shadow lunged again, its monstrous form twisting impossibly, jaws snapping like a trap baited with despair. "No!" I yelled, shoving the crystal forward. "I command you, darkness, begone!" The air trembled, the shadows screamed, a cacophony of horror that made my bones vibrate. They recoiled as the light flared again, but it was fleeting. An icy blast wrested the brightness away, leaving us engulfed in darkness once more. The shadows hissed like serpents stirring in a tangle of chaos. "You think your light frightens us?" A chilling voice slithered from the depths, deep and mocking. "You know nothing of true terror." My heart thudded against my ribs, and terror clutched at my throat. I shot a glance at Uncle Jack. The fear etched on his face burned into my memory. His hand tightened around the wooden handle of an antique dagger, a relic from his past, a last line of defense. "Evelyn, you have to focus," he yelled as shadows darted closer, flicking like flames in a strong wind. "Remember what we practiced. Use it." I closed my eyes, drawing a breath that seared my lungs. Each incantation we had whispered around campfires echoed in my mind. I imagined our family, the bond between us, the warmth of each laugh shared. The darkness couldn't sever that. It would fight against it in vain. I began to chant, letting the words flow. The crystal glowed, the light swirling around us. "You don't own me. Not today." The shadows wretched and twisted, as if physically pained by my words. Their black tendrils froze mid-motion, dissipating like smoke in a gust of wind. I felt a fleeting pull, a bond strengthening between us three. Uncle Jack held his ground, chant rising with mine while my brother, uncharacteristically brave, added his small voice to the mix. Suddenly, a blinding flash erupted around us. The light shone in every crevice, illuminating the cabin, the stark horror around us. The shadows shrieked, caught in the brilliance, but the moment felt precarious, as if the light would give way again at any moment. Then, silence fell. The air calmed, but fear still gripped us. The shadows trembled, like angry bees that couldn't decide if they would strike or flee. But before I could catch my breath, a deep growl coursed through the cabin, otherworldly and relentless. "Fools, you think you have won?" It sneered, darkness pooling, thickening, forming a larger figure. "I am only the beginning. Uncle Jack, what do we do?" I gasped, desperation clawing at me as fresh dread washed over my spirit. He turned to me, gripping the dagger like it was his last lifeline. "We prepare for the worst. They're not alone," he warned, his eyes narrowing in fierce resolve. The shadows gathered again, more powerful and numerous than before. My heart raced as the cold realization dawned. We had awakened something far more sinister than the phantoms we had fought. A piercing shriek cut through the stillness, echoing in my mind. "You're trapped, and darkness is just starting to play. Will you join it?" My resolve faltered, but then I recalled those fleeting moments of joy, the moments we fought for. We had to keep fighting. Uncle Jack lowered his voice, a sense of urgency threading through it. "We stick together. It's our only hope." I clenched my fists, the warmth of the crystal still cradled in my palm. We had come this far together. We wouldn't stop now. But an inevitable question lingered, overshadowing hope. What more was waiting behind the curtain of darkness, ready to leap into our lives? And with the shadows beckoning and chaos swirling, I wondered, could we withstand the next wave of terror? Or would we fall into the abyss we had unleashed? The shadows surged, a mass of darkness coalescing into something monstrous. It loomed before us, its form shifting like mist, hungry and voracious. My heart raced, a wild drum in my chest, as cold tendrils crept toward me, clawing at my sanity. "Evelyn," Uncle Jack's voice pulled me from the paralyzing grip of fear. "Focus. We can't let it break our bond." I steadied myself, recalling his words. We were stronger together. I sensed my brother beside me, his small body trembling but his eyes ablaze with the same fierce determination I felt. We were surrounded by shadows, but we were also shrouded in light from the crystal. "Let us push back," I shouted, my voice rising above the growls that rattled the cabin. The words poured out like lava, hot and unstoppable. "We are not afraid." With the last word, I thrust the crystal forward. It flared to life, casting a brilliant beam across the darkness, creating a barrier between us and our encroaching doom. For a moment, the shadows recoiled, but their growls morphed into laughter, mocking, chilling, as if they were taunting us for our naive bravery. "Your light can't save you forever, little girl," the deep voice hissed, echoing with malice. I felt the tendrils pushing against the light, testing it, like a predator circling its prey. Uncle Jack lunged forward, wielding his dagger with fierce elegance, slashing through the darkness, but it seemed to reform and weave back together instantaneously. Every strike felt like swinging against a wall of smoke. "The cabin is your prison," the voice snarled, and with each word, the air thickened, pressing down on us, squeezing the breath from my lungs. That I looked to my brother, desperation clinging to me. "We have to do it together. Hold hands." I reached out, and he grasped my palm tight. Uncle Jack joined us, forming a triangle of defiance. "The light is our strength," I cried, focusing on the warmth of the crystal. Together, we began to chant in unison, our voices rising with passion, blending into one powerful force. The brightness intensified, swirling around us like a storm. I felt it course through me. The laughter of shadows began to falter, replaced by howls of outrage. "What's happening?" Uncle Jack shouted over the chaos, his eyes narrowing. "It's working," I yelled back, determination fueling every syllable. "We're pushing them back." The shadows writhed, the air crackling with energy as our united voices pushed against the darkness. The cabin trembled, shaking off its hauntings like a winter coat shed in the spring. But deep down, I sensed a disturbance, a dark undertow, something lurking just at the edge of our victory. Then, from the depths of the shadows, something else emerged, a pair of glowing eyes, burning with an eerie hunger. A new presence broke through, and its chilling laughter echoed through the chaos. "You think you're winning? You've only scratched the surface of what's to come." My stomach dropped. Panic surged again, and I faltered momentarily in the chant. Uncle Jack shot me a sharp look. "Don't. Remember what we came here for." The crystal flickered, its glow weakening as doubt seeped in. I couldn't let that happen. Fear threatened to fracture our unity. I forced myself to breathe, picturing the reasons we fought, the love and memories we held dear. Our light is stronger than your darkness," I shouted defiantly, pushing forward with the chant once more. We wouldn't lose. But the unsettling truth lingered. There was more behind the veil of darkness than we could fathom. As the shadows surged back, gathering into a thick mass, doubts gnawed at my mind. Had we really awakened something far worse? What was waiting in the wings, ready to claim us? And just as the pulse of light began to wane, I spotted a flicker, something moving just out of reach, an almost familiar shape hidden within the dark. My heart sank. What had I unleashed, and who might it be? We were in deep now, and with the shadows tightening their grip, the question loomed like a storm ready to break. Could we truly face what was lurking within the darkness? Or were we about to discover the true meaning of terror? I tightened my grip on my brother's hand, and I felt Uncle Jack's presence beside me, unwavering. The weight of shadows pressed down, a threatening storm that beckoned chaos. What was lurking there? My heart thudded, each beat amplifying the fear swirling inside me. I shot a glance at the glowing eyes, a bright and unsettling reminder that our fight was far from over. With renewed strength, I thrust the crystal ahead, igniting its brilliant light once more. "Stay with me," I commanded, pushing through the panic within. The chant surged from our throats, drawing upon everything we had: love, courage, and the bonds of family. Glimmers of hope sparked as the darkness twitched from our light, like a beast recoiling. But that laugh pierced through the tension, driving into the very marrow of my bones. How sweet! So naive. It cooed, the voice oozing with malice, as if the shadows themselves spoke from the depths of some otherworldly abyss. I felt a sudden chill seep into my bones, as if the laughter was reality itself, a reminder that fear was alive and clawing at the edges of our resolve. The darkness writhed and morphed, a twisted tapestry unfurling before us. Just then, a blast of cold swept across the cabin, stirring dust and echoing deep within. The shadows began to carve a path, drawing in tighter. "Do not engage with it. Focus," Uncle Jack shouted, his voice a lifeline in the growing storm. I nodded, my resolve solidifying. I could feel my brother's breath on my shoulder, both comforting and reminding me of the dire stakes of this battle. Then, the shadows parted like a curtain unveiling a horror show. A figure, cloaked in darkness, emerged, its outline shifting, but unmistakably familiar. My breath hitched as my heart skipped beats. "No, can't be. Evelyn," it purred, the voice so hauntingly sweet, and yet twisted. "Did you miss me? Stop it," I screamed, my voice shattering like glass against the growing silence. My pulse thudded as I fought off the creeping feelings of memories I had buried deep. "You're not real," the figure chuckled low, an unsettling sound that ricocheted ominously against the cabin walls. "But I am, sweet girl. I am everything you fear, and more." Shadows rippled around it, entwining like serpent coils, drawing me closer against my will. "No, fight it," Uncle Jack yelled, his voice filled with urgency. "It's feeding off your doubt." Thrusting my chin upward, I felt uncertainty clawing at me. Memories flickered turbulent, wild the shades of my past battling within the very essence of my soul. I had to let it go. "You don't control me," I shouted defiantly, pouring all my frustration into the chant, my light sparking back to life, and I felt my brother's grip tighten instinctively. And then, a surge of warmth blossomed from the crystal, sending a beam of dazzling brightness lancing through the shadows. The laughter wavered, tinged with fear, as the figure faltered momentarily. But the moment was fleeting. The eyes prowled closer, and I heard whispers threading through the air, a concoction of encouragement and dread wrapped around each syllable. "Join us, Evelyn. You were never truly alone." Terrors crashed within me, clashing against the burgeoning light. Was this battle worth it? Would we lose everything we fought to hold on to? Uncle Jack's face was a mixture of fear and determination. "Trust in the light," he shouted again, his eyes sharp and unyielding. The shadows shrunk back, but the figure loomed, tempting, taunting. My head spun as the chant bounced in my ears. I needed clarity. Who was the real enemy, and what was hiding in the dark corners of my mind? The light flickered again, and panic surged. I had to act fast. We were on the precipice, teetering between darkness and light. But what awaited us if we fell? As the shadows swelled and crashed around us once more, I braced for whatever revelation would come. How many more layers of darkness were there? Facing an alarming choice, I pondered. Should I embrace the chaos and risk everything? Or was it time to confront what I had buried deep within and unearth? The truth hidden in the shadows? My throat felt dry as the figure's laughter echoed like a twisted melody, drowning out my thoughts. The light around us pulsed stronger, flickering like a candle that threatened to be snuffed out. I clenched my brother's hand tighter, his steady presence igniting a spark of defiance within me. "Fight against it. You're stronger than this." Uncle Jack's voice cut through the chaos, a lifeline I desperately needed. I shook my head, willing the darkness to retreat. Couldn't he give in? Not now. Not ever again. "Evelyn," the figure whispered, its tones syrupy sweet yet laced with something darker. "I'm here to help you, to free you." Images shot through my mind, moments of happiness turned into pain, laughter becoming tears. "Shut up," I shouted back, hatred bubbling up from deep inside. "You don't know me." "Of course I do," it cooed, inching closer. That familiar shape twisted, a shadow of what I once loved. Memories stirred within the laughter of simpler days now twisted into a weapon against me. But I couldn't let it in. "You're a lie," I screamed, raising the crystal once more, light cascading from it like a wild river rushing forth. It illuminated the figure, banishing some shadows but not all. It winced, recoiling as if the light scorched its skin. "Lies? I am your past, Evelyn. It's woven into your very soul." The room vibrated, the walls echoing around us like they too felt the weight of oh-so-familiar guilt and anger. I forced myself to breathe, steadying the tremor in my hands. "No, you're just darkness, feeding on my fears." Uncle Jack stepped forward, hands raised, the fierce light of the crystal flashing in tandem with his resolve. "Let it go, Evelyn. It can't hurt you if you don't let it." I let the words flow over me like a blanket, wrapping my mind in warmth. But as I focused, I started to notice something else. A low murmuring worming its way into my ears. "You think you can resist forever?" The chilling voice whispered, sending an icy finger down my spine. "You'll always come back to me." I gritted my teeth. Clarity emerged. This battle wasn't just against the figure, but against the haunting echoes of what I thought I'd buried. My heart raced. "No, I choose to fight." With every ounce of strength, I pointed the crystal straight at the figure, pouring my heart into it. "You will not control me." The beam of light exploded from the crystal, illuminating the room in a blinding flash. The shape shrieked, a sound so horrid it rattled the very rafters of the cabin. The shadows flickered and clawed back, revealing deeper, darker horrors lurking behind. But before I could fully grasp what might emerge, everything shifted. My brother's grip slipped for a moment, and in that flickering instant, another aura appeared, vaster, darker. I looked around wildly. This wasn't just a figure before us anymore. An entire abyss had opened up, revealing glimpses of horrors I had never wanted to see. Nightmarish silhouettes hovered in the corners, waiting for their moment to strike. No, stay together. Uncle Jack barked as the shadows swelled and roared, twisting into a spiraling vortex that threatened to consume us whole. Fear clawed at my throat. The reality of the situation pierced through my armor of light. How many layers would we have to peel back? How many battles could I possibly win? The air thickened with tension, pushing me down. I cast a desperate glance at my brother, who was staring wide-eyed at the vortex. I needed to act. We have to, but before I could finish my thought, a flash of red light ripped through the darkness, surging from the vortex and grabbing my attention. Something or someone was emerging, its shape daunting and terrifying, with intent that felt all too real. Was this the true heart of our demons, where hope flickered and despair thrived? The answer lay just beyond my reach, but one thing was certain. We had stepped into a deeper fight, a fight that would test our very souls. But who could we trust when shadows whispered our secrets? The swirling shadows swelled, and the air crackled with raw emotion. Evelyn could feel the despair creeping in deeply, like a cold fog wrapping around her heart. Stay together, Uncle Jack shouted again, his voice a steady anchor amidst the rising tide of darkness. The sharp edges of panic clawed at her thoughts, but she had to push through. She wasn't just fighting for herself, she was fighting for her brother, for Uncle Jack, for the bond of family that had led them to this moment. The red light surged, revealing a figure robed in a dark mist, taller than the cabin itself, its presence looming with a predatory hunger. You've opened the door, children, it hissed, its voice syrupy and thick with malice. And now, the night is at your door ready to welcome you. No, she wouldn't let it win. She couldn't face the darkness emerging from her past. With a fierce snarl of defiance, Evelyn raised the crystal high, its warm glow pulsating against the icy chill of the room. You don't own me, she shouted, emboldened by the love she felt for her family. The memories swirled in her mind, battling back the horrid temptations that thrummed in the shadows. The shadows stretched and twisted viciously, their forms dancing like flame, eager to snuff out her spark of resistance. Uncle Jack tightened his grip on the dagger, his face etched with determination. Together, he cried, channel every bit of light you have. Evelyn clasped her brother's hand tightly. The warmth of his small fingers steadied her trembling resolve. Let us go, she screamed, launching into a fervent chant. The words poured out, a wild symphony that soared above the chaos, igniting the air with power and purpose. We protect our bond. We'll fight the night. With every word, the crystal flared brighter, illuminating the corners of the cabin, revealing shadows quivering with uncertainty. The monstrous figure loomed closer, its hollow eyes narrowed, glimmering with rage, as though it were made of pure night. You think your light can save you? You think your bond is stronger than this darkness? Yes, Uncle Jack shouted, stepping forward with more confidence than ever. We stand together against you. The chant surged between them, their voices synchronizing into one brilliant pulse. The shadowy figure's form began to splinter, as if light pierced the darkness they had unleashed. Fight, kids! Keep going! Evelyn could feel the tension shifting, the shadows retreating, their growls turning to anguished howls. We are not afraid, she howled, feeling the light vibrate in her veins with a joy only family could ignite. But then, a wave of new darkness surged forward, pulling at their unity. Fractions of doubt echoed in their minds. You'll never get rid of me, they screamed. You belong to the dark now. No, Evelyn shouted once more, feeling bravery blossom like a flower piercing through the frost. We choose the light. We choose love. You will not break our bond. The brightness surged, brighter than before, cascading around them like an unstoppable force. Shadows shrieked and faltered, pieces of their essence scattering like fallen leaves in a storm. And just as suddenly, the grand figure that had dominated their nightmare shattered. The darkness writhed, thinning and dissipating, until only a soft whisper remained. You may have won this round, but I'll always be waiting in the dark. Silence enveloped the cabin, a heavy, stifling quiet that felt like a long-held breath finally released. The shadows faded, leaving only a lingering echo of their nefarious presence. They had pushed back the darkness, for now. Evelyn looked around at Uncle Jack and her brother, who were just as shaken and breathless. Relief washed over her like a warm tide, but so did a weight of bittersweet realization. They had fought not just an external battle but a battle against their fears and doubts interwoven in their history. As the cabin regained its haunting stillness, Uncle Jack fell to his knees, exhausted but grateful. "We did it," he murmured, the intensity of the moment receding as hope sprang forth to fill the spaces where darkness once dwelled. But Evelyn knew they'd have to leave this place behind, leave the shadows buried deep in the Rockies. She took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of fur and wet earth, alongside a twist of lingering fear. "We need to get out of here," she whispered, offering a hand to Uncle Jack and squeezing her brother's shoulders. With weary hearts, they slowly made their way outside, the dawn breaking low on the horizon. Light spilled into the void of the night, illuminating each crevice, and they found themselves standing together, surrounded by a new day that felt more vibrant than ever. "This place will always be a part of us," Uncle Jack said softly, glancing back at the cabin. "But it doesn't have to define our future." Evelyn nodded, tears stinging her eyes as she finally felt a sense of closure easing the aches within. They turned to the open road. The warm morning sun smiled down on them, promising brighter moments ahead. Together, they would carve their path. United by love and the battles they fought, they walked forward, laughter breaking free from their lips, solidifying their bond. They were no longer shackled by fear, and as the Rockies stood silent in reverie, they knew their pasts would always echo, but it was the future they would shape together. So now, here's the deal. You need to subscribe immediately so you won't miss the next explosive chapter of stories just like this one. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and show your support. And explode the comments section with your reactions and theories about this wild conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this finale. Your support makes all the difference. Join our incredible community.